Hello friends, welcome back. And in this demo we are going to see Stream Analytics job in action. So first of all, we will create Azure Blob storage, which will act as our input and output. So basically we will create input and output container in Azure Blob storage. And then we'll have a Stream Analytics job here in which we will create input, output, as well as query, which is the processing logic inside this job. And while creating this input, we will sync up this input with the blob storage input and output of blob storage with the output of the job. And then we will start this job here. And once we start this job input will always keep an eye on blob storage input. And as soon as we put some file here, so for example, if you put the JSON file inside this job container, job input will immediately pick up this file and will start processing depending on what kind of logic we have defined. And after processing, it will write this file back to the job output, which is again, because it is sync up with the blob storage output, it will write back to the blob storage output. And from here, if we want, we can download this file or do any further processing. So our first step will be to create the blob storage and both of these container. Our second step will be to create a Stream Analytics job and define the input, output, and processing logic. And then we will start this job. And once the job will be running, we will input or we will import JSON file into the input container. And then hopefully this should pick up by the job, process it, write it back to the output, and finally to the blob storage output. So let's start with the Azure Blob storage. Alright, so I'm in my portal now. And if you remember, our first step was to create a storage account. And I have a shortcut here from my storage account. Or you know that if required, you can always go ahead and search it in the search box right here. So in the storage account, I will add a new instance here. And first I will choose a subscription. I only have one subscription, so I'll choose that. And you know that subscription is for the billing purpose. And then we'll choose our resource group. If you do not have existing resource group, you can create a new one. And resource group is to organize all our resources into a folder like a structure. And then we will give the storage name, storage blob. I'll try to make it a unique. So let me add some unique number here. And in the next step, we will choose the location. And we want to make sure that all our resources will keep at the same location so that we can reduce the latency, as well as it is always a good idea to create our Stream Analytics job in the region as close as possible to your input and output so that we don't get overcharged for transferring data between regions. So my storage account will be in West US 2, and I will create my Streaming Analytics also will be in same location. So next is performance. Standard is fine for me. Version 2 looks good. And replication, I will choose the cheapest possible. And access tier host is fine. And I will keep all others as defaults. And I will click on review and create. Everything looks good here. I will click on create. Now this will take few minutes to create this account. Meanwhile, I think we can go ahead and create our streaming job account. So once again, I will go to all services. And in analytics, I can find the Stream Analytics job, or as you know, you can always search here. So let me create Stream Analytics job here. So let me add instance of this job, and let's give some name here. Stream job 108, let's say. All right, I get it. And then we choose our subscription and then our resource group. And once again, I will keep as the same location where I created my storage account. And now here we have to choose our hosting environment, and I have the option of cloud, which is going to simply create the job in the cloud, or I have the option Edge. And in case of Edge, my stream analytics job can be deployed to an IoT devices. So in my demo, in my current demo, I will keep it as a cloud, and this should work for me. And finally, I have to decide on the streaming units. So the more input and output I have in my job, the more stream units I need to provision. And as of now, default is 3, which should work fine for me. So I will click on create, and this may take a few seconds or a minute to create this account. So I will stop my recording here. All right, it is created anyway, so we are good. So let's go to the resources, and here we have our brand new Stream Analytics job account. And here you can see that right now our job is not running. This is in stop condition. We can start it, or we have option to delete our job here. And this is the query, or this is the logic for this job. So right now we have this default sample query here to copy everything from input to output, but we will change this query in this demo. And on the left hand side, you can see that it is showing our input and output. Right now it is blank because we have not defined anything. And below we have some monitoring charts here. Since we have not created anything, so obviously both of the charts are blank as of now. And on the left hand side, you can see they're all pretty standard option here. We have activity log and access control. And in the setting, we can look at the properties of this job, like resource type, location, resource group, and all those kind of information. Now, job topology is important. This is where we are going to define our input and our output, and if there is any function, and our query, our processing logic. And below we have configuration options. For example, we can go into storage account setting, and we can add some storage account here to keep our reference data, or if required, we can scale our job here, or if required, we can scale our streaming units here. Right now we have 3, which we created, or which we choose while we creating this job, but you see that we can choose it till 192. So for our demo purpose, 3 is good enough. And then we have locale, which is English United States, is good for us. We have event ordering here. If some events are coming late or out of order, we can configure timing here, that under this timing, job will consider these events which are coming late or out of order. And here we define the error policy, that if error comes, we want to retry those events, or we can just drop those inputs in case of error. Similarly, if we go down, we have some of the monitoring and other support and troubleshooting options. All right, so we want to start with the inputs here. We will define the input, and we have 2 types of input here. One is the streaming input, and we have, as we discussed earlier, 3 kinds of streaming input: Events Hub, IoT Hub, and Blob storage. In this demo, we are going to use the Blob storage, and we can also define the reference input, and we can put this reference data either in SQL Server or Blob storage. So before we configure the input, let's go ahead and see if our Blob storage has been created. So I will create another copy of my portal, another instance in the separate tab, and I will go into my resource group and course demo. And if you remember, we created storage blob 108. So this account has been created successfully. So let's go into container, and here we will create a 2 container. One is blob input, and another one is blob output. All right, so we have our input and output container here, which we are going to configure in our streaming job. So let me go back to my streaming job here and add input as a blob storage. All right, so we have to give some input alias here, and these need not to be same as our blob input. So I can say something like stream input, and here we have option either to choose blob storage manually or take one from my subscription. So I will take one from my subscription. I'll choose my subscription here, and my storage account is storage blob 108. And if you remember, we created blob input and blob output as a 2 container. So I will map this stream input with blob input here. And since I'm directly using the container, I do not have any folder inside container, so path pattern will be blank for me. And I will keep all other settings as a default as of now and will not change anything, and will click on save. Now meanwhile this will create, I will go ahead and create the output also. So let me click on output and add output here, and you can see we have many options in output, and in the upcoming lesson we are going to discuss all these options. Basically, after processing, we can push the final output in any of these services. But right now, we are using the blob storage also for output our storage. And here we need to give the output name. It seems like our input has been created. All right, so strm output should fine. And again, I will be choosing the output from my subscription, and I will choose my storage account as storage blob 108, and output folder in blob will be blob output. All right, so I will go down here. All right, so there are 2 important settings here, and we should be careful while we choosing this setting. The first one is the minimum rows. This means that no output batch or output file will get created unless I have at least 10 rows in my output. The next setting is the maximum time. Here is the maximum time the job is going to wait to have the minimum rows requirement satisfied. So if I put 1 minute here, 0 hour and 1 minute, this means that the job is going to wait for 1 minute to have the minimum rows completed. After the 1 minute is up, the job is going to create an output regardless of the number of rows I already have in my output. Or in another sense, you can think of it like whatever will be minimum, job will execute first. So if we get the 10 rows first, or it will pass 1 minute first, whatever will come first, my job will continue and push the output. So this looks good to me, and then I will create on save here. All right, so we have already configured our input and output. The next step will be to configure our query here, and you can see that we have the default query here, and we have our input as a stream input and the stream output. Right now we do not have any data in the input folder or container. That's why we cannot see here. Otherwise, if we click here, we can see the sample data from our input container. So if you want, I can show you this quickly. Let me go back to my storage and input folder here and upload a JSON file. So here is my input file, and I will choose this file here. I will upload it. All right, so it uploaded successfully. Now let me go back to my streaming job and maybe refresh it here. All right, so after a second I can see my input sample here. Let me collapse this so that we get more space to look at our. All right, so you can see some sample data here when I click on my stream input, because this is connected with blob input, and from there this service is fetching data and showing us the sample data right here. So let me write this query here. So I will paste this query here, in which I am taking data from stream input, and I am fetching only 3 columns here. One is the city, one is the latitude and longitude. Let me show you my sample data. So this is the input file I have, in which I have city, I have coordinates of the city, which is latitude and longitude, and then I have other information of the city like population, municipality, and region. Now in the output, I just want to have the city and the coordinate. So in this simple example, I am trying to exclude other columns from this file. So from my input, it will fetch these 3 columns and will write into my stream output, means in this job output folder. If required, I can also test this query here. All right, so I can see city, latitude, and longitude here. So this looks good. So let me go ahead and save this query here. All right, so my query saved, and I will go back to my overview page and I will start my job here. But before that, let me go ahead and delete this file from my input container. So right now I do not have anything in the input container, and you can see we have 2 containers output. We do not have anything on output, as well as we do not have anything on input. All right, so we are good. Now I'm back to my streaming job, and let me start my job here. And here I have option to change the streaming unit if required. And another option is if I want to start job now, or I can choose the custom option where I can specify a particular date and time when I want to run this job. So basically I can schedule this job at particular time, but I want to run my job now in this demo. So I will click on start here. It will take maybe a few seconds before my job start. I'm stopping my recording here. All right, my job started successfully. And once again, I have my input defined here. I have my output defined here. I have my query here, and I have started the job. Now I will go back to my storage account, and in the input, I will upload my file. So right now, mind you that my input basically in the job is continuously monitoring the blob input container of my blob storage account. So as soon as they will find this file here, the analytics service will immediately pick up this file and process this file. So let me upload this file, and my upload completed successfully. And probably in a minute or so, this file will be picked up by the streaming job, and we should be able to see file in the output. And you can see that file is already here. So this file picked up by this service, streaming service, processed it, and this is the output we have here. So let us look at the output, and we should be able to see those 3 columns here which we selected in our query. So although this demo was very simple, but the idea was to show you the flow, how our streaming job connect with the blob storage, how we picked up the files in the input folder, process it, and put it back to the output folder. Now, if you put more files in the input folder, as a streaming process, the more file will keep coming into this folder, and the stream job will keep, picking up this file process and putting it back to the output folder. So I hope this clear the point how stream analytics job connect with the blob storage for streaming analysis purpose.